Thank you for that. I'm told that we are now going into a question and answer session. She's nodding. So, who wants to put a hand up and I'll pick away? I don't bite often. Right, here we go. This guy there.
How come where you get the video from the object we saw?
The cylindrical object?
Yeah.
That's 2 clips taken by the man and wife couple.
Yeah.
The police officer, the male police officer in his back garden took it on his mobile phone and sent it to me.
Oh, okay.
So it's a private, it's not an on-duty sighting, it's an off-duty sighting. But he's still the same officer with his trained eyes, and he's given me a very detailed report about it. And I have no doubt that he's seen something and he's got it backed up with photographs and video clips. Okay, next question. Here we go at the front.
The same case, did he say anything about how it took off?
He basically said it just went very slowly from horizon to horizon, tumbling slowly, huge dimensions, clear sky. The irony is that you would think, because it was moving towards a town called Consett in the northeast, that there would have been lots of people. But strangely, and is often the case, not everybody looks up into the sky. But this is a relatively low altitude object. But he made private phone calls to the nearby airports and was told there was nothing there. Now, there's clearly something there that shouldn't be there. And if his dimensions are anywhere near right, even if it was, instead of 400 feet, instead of 200 metres or 150 metres in length, even if it was only 50 feet, it's still a very large object moving in an unconventional way for 30 minutes from horizon to horizon without any means of obvious propulsion, clearly rotating on its own axis. Balloons don't work like that. If you let a balloon go, it just with the thermals on the wind. It couldn't stay in that pretty much fixed upright position and doing that. Very slow and precise. So I don't know what that is, but I know what it's not. Next question. There we go. In fact, all right, sorry, I can't see because of the big light, big white light. Go on. Here we go. Right. Who is it at the back? Yeah, on the back, yeah, with the nice vest on. Yeah.
What do you think about this pop culture around aliens and this phenomenon? Like teenagers, they love these kind of films with aliens and.
Well, there's certainly a lot of interest at the moment in aliens, but with the film industry, I'm a big film buff, I always was, so I have a big interest in films anyway, but there is a big interest at the moment, but with all things, films tend to go in cycles, and when there was Close Encounters of the Third Kind, there was a rash of science fiction kind of spaceship alien films, and then it will be the thrillers, and then it will be love stories that get the flavour of the month. I wouldn't draw too much attention to that, but you do touch on something that I see that you're a young person, and I mean that not derogatory, but I'm pleased that you're here because one of the things I get worried by is as I lecture around, I'm often seeing people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and no disrespect to those. I want to see a lot more younger people because we live in a culture now that says we play video games and shoot aliens all the time on games. And people say, well, we watch love science fiction TV series, but it doesn't transfer. And yet everybody says that we live in an age where they say a popular thing that's said is that after pornography on the internet, people look for UFO stories. Now, there's a lot of rubbish out on websites, but there's also some good stuff if you know where to look. But that doesn't translate into young people coming into this subject. And there are some young people in this subject, and I encourage that to come forward because, if anything, I hope you've come into this lecture tonight with an open mind, because it'd be pretty dangerous if you had a closed mind. But if you've come in with an open mind, it means that you're willing to learn information and willing to rationalise and listen to things. You don't have to accept it, but you're willing to listen to things. And that's what you need in an open mind. And what I've done, hopefully, is illustrated that very normal, credible people, the village Bobby, who you may well know, the family officer that you've known for 20 years, are having very credible sightings, but they're not on their own. 3/4 of them are always with another officer. And when we start talking about 425 cases and 903 officers, that's a huge body of evidence, forgive the pun and please, but it is a huge body of evidence to say that these very real, professionally trained people who rationalise police officers do not stand up and raise their head above the parapet and give their names unless they've seen some, because they know that they're leaving themselves open for ridicule. But as time goes on and those figures get bigger, then it means that officers should have an atmosphere where they feel that they can forward. But in answer to your question, I don't know why there's a proliferation at the moment. I think it's just cyclical. I wouldn't read too much attention into it. But what surprises me is there aren't many more young people who should be far more open, because they've grown up in an era where they're used to satellite technology, live transmissions, space flight. You would think they would be far more interested. And it strikes me that there's a lot of armchair UFO enthusiasts, but we need actually people to come forward and form groups and join groups like Exopolitics Denmark, because we have to raise the awareness that this is a real thing and that you're just not being told. Next question. Here we go on the front.
Do you have your own personal theory?
I've heard that before. Right, here we go. Right, we talked about it briefly at the break. Yes. One of the regular questions that's put to me is, okay, you say that there's aliens, but why don't they announce themselves and make it obvious to everybody? We won't have this debate anymore. Well, they obviously could do. What I would say is that you're probably not aware, but there are many, many sightings that have happened in front of thousands of people. People may have heard of the lights, Phoenix lights.
Yeah.
Now that was tracked over about 200 miles as the object moved towards Phoenix, Arizona. And the sad thing about that was there was an opportunity there to have a major breakthrough with the press, because the governor at the time, Fife Symington, he called a big press conference, and there was a huge media interest because so many thousands of people had watched this huge boomerang-shaped object moving across the sky, and then it took up position over the skies. At the time, he said in 1997, I think it was, that he called a press conference and said, I'm going to announce the truth. And people all wondered, and there was the world's press there. And then he brought in a guy wearing an alien suit and ridiculed it. However, 10 years later, Fife Symington, now a retired governor, says, well, actually, I did see it. But wouldn't it have been nice if he'd have had the bottle in 1997, when there was the world's media attention, for the governor at the time serving to say, I saw that too. Could have been a chance for a breakthrough. But it's gone, and I suspect people said to him, you do that, you won't be governor for very long. I suspect that was what happened. When we talk about the media, it's a huge subject, and I could spend 5 hours talking about the way the media control this subject at the very highest level. I think it comes from political level down to the very highest levels, not at local level, regional level, but the very highest levels. I've worked on now maybe 14 documentaries, and they all follow the same pattern. Bit of good stuff, bit of pilots, bit of mythology about the alien myths and alien heads, and then a few people who are nutters who are standing on the hill with a tin lid on their head going, no, 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 you know, that kind of thing. And the bottom line is everybody gets confused, as they were from the start. And that's what they all do. Answering your question, I've developed a theory to explain why I think, and it's only my own theory, why they come and they don't announce themselves in a major scale. I would imagine all of us live in houses. Some of us may live in flats, but for those that live in houses, those that have got a garden, imagine in your garden if you turned over a piece of concrete in your garden, and in the bottom of your garden you came across a colony of 24-legged ants. Not 8-legged ants, a 24-legged breed of ant in your garden. And it's the only place on the entire earth where this colony is. And you're fascinated, you don't know anything about ants, you say, right, I tell a few people, wow, this guy's got 24-legged ants. Soon the story gets out to the local media, a report comes round. Wow, you've got 24-legged ants, this is amazing, it's the only one in the world. Once the story gets out, then who does it attract? The people who study ants, wow, there's a new variety of 24-legged ants. I must go to this garden and see these. So they come from all around the world, from the far ends of the earth, to research the 24-legged ants. Then you've got some unscrupulous people who think, I collect tiger skins, I collect tigers, I collect ivory. I'm going to get some dead 24-legged ants and sell them for lots of money. So they come in and they break into the garden and they steal some 24-legged ants. And then you've got the people who are thinking, 24-legged ants, they've got an extra 16 legs? What physical development in their biology has caused this? The scientists, and they go, we want to get to that garden and study the 24-legged ants. Now, some of the scientists are good scientists, and they do say, can we have some of your colony? We want to analyse this. So they get some and they go away and they kill them and they study them under a microscope and see what physiology they've got. And then there's also the unscrupulous scientist who thinks, I want to do my own experiments from these. And they steal some. Now substitute the 24 ant colony for the Earth. And now think of UFOs coming here. It's rare. It's only in this bit of the neighbourhood. There's lots of water here, maybe more than any in the local neighbourhood. It's a bit like an oasis in the middle of this part of the cosmos. And we're a bit maybe like the Great Barrier Reef or the Galapagos Islands, that there's unique species here of fauna and plant and animal life that just don't exist in abundance, maybe on other planets, in our part of the galaxy. So they come, some come and just watch and surveil. Some come and steal a few cows and do a few nasty little experiments. Some come and even do, allegedly, human mutilation experiments. I think that we're quite unique in our little corner of the galaxy, and I think the vast majority of the species that come here just surveil like we would do if we were in the Great Barrier Reef. We'd swim with the fishes, but we wouldn't steal the fishes, would we? We'd just watch them in their habitat and just nicely watch them and not interfere. And I think that's what's going on here. I think there is a level of contact with some species, with governments and with some people, but in reality, me and you's never going to know that because we're not important enough until such a time as there's a major breakthrough and there's an announcement, which I think will happen within the next 10 years. So that's why we're a bit special. Next question. One there.
I think why is all this subject so top secret? Why is all the files sealed? Any file is released and accessible for the ordinary people. But have there been any attack? Is there anything to be afraid?
Yes, no, I think there is a genuine need to be afraid, and I'm not being alarmist, but there are cases of pilots being sent up, military pilots being sent up to intercept. There was a very famous case in 1948 involving a pilot called Thomas Mantell, and basically a UFO was seen visually over a base, US Air Force base, and it was seen by all the people in the air traffic tower. It was radar confirmed early on. There was a visual with high altitude binoculars from the air traffic tower. They sent up an aircraft, they sent up 3 aircraft. 2 aircraft ran out of fuel, so I had to go back. 1 aircraft followed behind, which is Thomas Mantell, and his last known transmission was basically on the lines of it's metallic, it's tremendous in size, and I'm going higher to take a better look. The next thing is they find his plane crashed and whatever. But that's a very famous case. There's also another one with another pilot called Gorman. He had an encounter with a sighting, and it was a dogfight, and this was about a year afterwards, about 1949. It nearly killed him. And he was in a dogfight with one for about half an hour, and it was all tracked on radar. There are many cases, military cases like that, and I mentioned the F-16 one from 1980. That's arguably, for me, the best evidential case there is, because the F-16s were recording all the cockpit instrumentation. So even though we didn't have we had visual sighting at the start, again from air traffic in the air bases, but the actual sighting from the pilots was radar only. But all 8 radars checking it, all the telemetry information correlated. When I said this object does this right angle turn as it nearly hit the ground and pulls 30 Gs, this is what you could produce in a court of law. And that case alone would say that there is an intelligent object. You've been in a 75-minute dogfight. The pilots got lock-ons twice, but when they came to try to hold the lock, it broke the lock, which shouldn't happen. It's quite bizarre, but all the information is recorded, multiple radar and everything, and you could put this on the 6 o'clock news, and it should have hit the 6 o'clock news. And we talk about media suppression. The deputy head of the Belgian Air Force was called Colonel de Broek. The Belgians wanted to release all this, and they called a public press conference and in Belgium, and they had lots of media there. And he showed them the radar footage, and he showed them the cockpit instrumentation footage and the false horizon and the diamond suddenly dropping below as it dropped 5,000 feet in 3 seconds. And he says this isn't stealth, it's moving way beyond the capabilities of stealth aircraft. This is 1980. And basically he came as close as anybody in the Belgian Air Force had to saying this was extraterrestrial. The guy who actually investigated it, Emil Schweitzer, was a civilian who worked with the radar specialists, and their final report was extraterrestrial, and he's gone on camera and said that. When you look at other cases, not all countries are secretive. Britain follows America's lead. Britain and America are the most secretive, America being the most secretive, which is surprising when you look at the Soviet Union and things like that. There have been Soviet studies. But America is the most secretive because I think they control the whole subject. Many reports of, there's a guy called Gordon Cooper who was an astronaut in the Gemini program. He was a test pilot, and he said that as a test pilot he was flying over a military base and a UFO came to land at the base. This is Holloman Air Force Base in the desert. And he said the object landed and he was filming it. He was flying the plane that was circling it. It came and landed, put 3 legs down, and people from Air Force officers went to meet 3 creatures that came out on the ground. And this was apparently all recorded. He says, we filmed it all, we give it to Washington, and we never saw it again. And this guy went on to be an astronaut. So I mean, what kind of people are they employing as an astronaut? He's a very credible guy, and he said it all his life. And he had further sightings himself that he talked about quite openly. He died a couple of years ago, but this is one of the people who were one of the first of the few. You've seen the film, The Right Stuff. He's one of them, 7. So, so there are many credible sightings like that. The reality is there's loads of information out there, but going back to that Belgian press conference, you'd think with that kind of telemetry data that it should have made the front page of every newspaper, because there you finally got this great piece of evidence, pulling 30 G, it's all tracked, absolutely producible in a court of law, absolutely anybody would say guilty, Your Honour. Did it make the front page of the Belgian top papers? No. Did it make the front pages of any newspapers? No. Why not? It should have. Did it get on the 6 o'clock news? No. Why not? It should have. And there you go, in one foul case, people say, well, where's the evidence? Well, there you go. You can't get really much better case than that proves the case. 75-minute dogfight, how many people before coming into this room knew that UFOs have got into dogfights for 75 minutes? Probably not many. Probably you go on the high street now and you go outside here and you stop the next 200 people, not one people will have heard of any of these cases. Now I'm trying to reach those kind of people. Next question.
I've seen, you talked about Gordon Cooper just before.
Yeah.
The guy who was the first astronaut in space from America, not the first man on the first astronaut on the. I saw him on CNN.
Yeah.
And I also have seen the other astronaut, Mitchell.
Yeah.
Mitchell, right?
Yeah.
These guys have been to CNN. Why do you think nothing happened at all? Because CNN is worldwide, you know, and
well,
it should pick something up. You know?
The thing is, what you've got is that from the day you're born, you pretty much learn anything from books, newspapers, TV, and film, and apart from what your parents tell you. Now, if everybody's brought up to believe that there's nothing to this subject because of what they've been told since the day they were born, the vast majority of people are going to grow up thinking there's nothing to the subject. quite logical. Or there might be something to it, but I don't really have any fixed feelings. And in reality, the media want that to happen because governments want it to happen. And why does it want to happen? The biggest reason why the cover-up still exists, loss of power. If you or I, in this room, invented a car that could run on fresh air, in this room we all sit down together, and by the end of the night we come up with a revolutionary new system that doesn't need any fuel, it can just run on fresh air and convert it into energy. We'd all become very rich, you would think, but the odds are that the people that are in the gas companies, the oil companies, do you think they're going to be kind of pleased that you might find this free energy? Might they think, ooh, our profits just go out the window? So might they come to us all and say, look, you 30, 50 people in this room, you've come up with a great idea, I'm going to give you £5 million each, you sign over the rights, and you never talk about it again. That's probably what happens. There is a lot of powerful mediums that says if you came across things that didn't need fossil fuels, you're then affecting a lot of people. Why do we not have the truth coming out? Well, does America want to admit the world's supposedly only superpower? Does America want to admit that they're not in charge of the airspace? That these things can come and go with impunity? Do they really want to admit that? Because if they did that, all the armaments contracts that they're involved in, and they've got their sticky fingers all over the world, aren't really worth the money they're written on. Because they wouldn't be that superpower anymore. They'd be pretty rendered useless. If they wanted to come and do whatever they do, they would do it. So you'd have to say that probably after all this time, whoever is coming is benign, else it would have happened by now. And in a curious way, when we go back to the Ministry of Defence and their decision to say that there's nothing ever been of defence significance, cutting the jargon aside, what it's basically saying is we know they're here, but as long as they're not threatening us, we're okay. And that's what they're basically saying. It's not they would officially say that, but that's what it really means. Any others? I think I've got, how long left here? 2 minutes. Or were you flicking away at me? 2 minutes, okay. Thank you. Right, one on the front there.
Yeah, I want to talk about something about credibility.
Okay.
You say that all these people, airspace watchers and policemen,
yep.
astronauts,
radar, air traffic, yeah.
From my point of view, they all have very stressful jobs.
Yep.
And a very psychological stress.
Yep.
And I can't help but see it as kind of therapy for them. And
so, are you inferring that perhaps all of these people in these specialised jobs have got maybe some psychological issues?
Yeah.
Well, that's a hell of a that's a bit bizarre.
Yeah, because I've tried this psychological stress, and I've also seen things that weren't there. And,
yeah, and there's been lots of studies.
And I know about collective awareness.
Okay, but what have I just been telling you about? Reproducible evidence. Okay?
Yeah.
The Belgian Air Force case. This is backed up with data, as long as your arm, plotting the object's movements.
Yeah.
Left, right. And the visual. So you've got airborne radar, ground radar, multiple airborne ground radar. This is not psychological. There are some, undoubtedly, there are some cases where people see things that they think are UFOs, but turn out to have a mundane explanation. The reality is, the general figure put out is that 95% of everything that's reported as a UFO turns out not to be. That it's meteorological, atmospheric, just mistaken. But I'm not interested in that 95%. I'm a police officer. I want to get to the bottom of it. So all I'm going to deal with is the best credible evidential pieces, the bits that aren't psychological. Yeah? When you have 24 officers over 6 different counties tracking an object going across the sky, and that was 2 lights moving like that, parallel to each other, across 6 counties, that's not psychological.
No, agreed, but where's your filter on filtering these observations? Because I know that some of them are very credible, but also some of them just sound too fantastic. And
some of them do sound too fantastic. But
how do you sort them out?
Well, one of the things I do is, well, first of all, I talk to them. When they usually email me, I ring them, and then I start a conversation. As I'm talking to them, I'm taking initial notes. I'm listening to the sound of them. I then ask them to fill in a report that sends police photographs of them in uniform, gives their police history, gives their telephone numbers and certain police questions that I can ask and codes and things like that. Police national codes, things that the police officer would know but the public wouldn't do. So there's that kind of verification process goes on. If it's obviously an officer on his own, I can't actually ever prove that any single one officer who has a sighting is seeing the same thing because it lacks corroboration. So some of the sightings sound incredible. But let's go back to the statistic. Of the 425 cases, over 300 are multiple officer. Anywhere from 2 up to 24 officers. There's many cases with 4, 5, 6, 10 officers. So you see what I mean? It's easy for one person to be mistaken, but if I all go to this room now and I throw a ball at that green light and smash it, and we're all as close as this, then the odds are that you'd all say that my description might change, but a guy went over and threw a ball at that light and smashed it. That's multiple corroboration. Yeah, but their perception of what I was wearing, the colour I am, how I walked across, did I run across? Everybody would be slightly different. But when you have multiple corroboration, that's a major plus factor, and that's what I look for. Yeah, so hopefully that's part of the filter process. But when you look at these very credible people, if you're in an air traffic control tower, and you've got your big high-powered binoculars, you're used to knowing what planes look like. You think about a traffic landing, they've got to be switched on. It's a really important job. Health and safety, lives, thousands of lives with one mistake are at risk. And if that guy is saying, or 2 or 3 guys is saying, there was an object stationary, like in the, some people may be aware there was an incident in 2006 over O'Hare Airport that's been kind of like tried to be damped down, but basically aircrew see an object, a sphere, hanging over one of the terminals. Can you imagine when you go into Copenhagen airport and you suddenly see an object low, and it's watched and it's seen by aircrew, people on the ground, luggage people and all that, and then suddenly it goes straight up in the sky, punches a hole, perfect hole, through the cloud, lots of people see it, and it starts coming over the radio into the air traffic and all that. Some people see it and then it becomes a story. The media start to report it and then there's a big clampdown. Multiple people from different vantage points. There's no psychology in that. That's a witness, a multiple witness. Okay, so yeah, there is some psychological aspects. 95% of cases don't turn out to be, but I'm only interested in the 5%, and of the 5%, we're probably talking about 3% that are genuine UFO. Yeah, that's the filter process.
We're finished.
All right, you've been a great audience. I'm told that there's no more questions. It's 10 to 10. Thank you very much. If there's any questions privately, well, go on then. Go on then, Peter. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Yeah, first, do we
Yeah.
have information about that Belgian conference of the...
Yeah, I can point you to that case. All you have to do is put into Google Belgium case 1990 F-16 or Belgium radar case 1990, and it'll bring you lots of cases repeating it. But it's a very credible. It's one of my favourite cases because it has all the data that would prove it in a court of law. Thank you for your attention. You've been a very good audience. Thank you very much. Thank you.